So Josh, thank you so much for jumping on the call. Thank you so much for reaching out. It's great that the videos are kind of reaching over your side of the world already, and it's great that you reached out and actually wanted to jump on the call. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really enjoy the stuff you're putting out and how you're pulling the community together.
Great, I appreciate that. I'm trying. So talk to me about how you got started. You mentioned that on the email that you sent to me that you kind of developed this product from your assisting days, and you realized there was no one really providing the equipment that was necessary for tethering because it was quite a new thing at the time. So talk to me a little bit about the process of like where the company came from and that first idea that you had to start the company and maybe what the first product was.
Sure. Yeah, this was back in 2007 when the financial crisis had started. And I was working in a different industry, and what I was doing was really not viable at the time. So I always had a huge passion for photography, and I had three nephews that they were playing like Little League baseball, and I started taking pictures of them at night and trying to sell photos. And during the day, I knew a couple of photographers that were working in the Phoenix area, commercial photographers, and I started assisting for them and trying to learn the business. And as I was out there on different shoots with them, there was a transition happening where photographers were starting to switch from film to digital. The cameras were getting good enough now where that was viable in their work. And there was no infrastructure supporting that at all. One of the photographers I worked with, he had this crazy table with plywood and screws and wing nuts, and it would take a half an hour, 45 minutes to set up and break down. And we're here in Phoenix, Arizona in the summertime, like you want to get in and out as quickly as possible. And it was really cumbersome. So I was like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I started thinking about how we could support computers on the set really easily. So I had started tinkering around building a table that would go on a tripod, and that's where my idea first came from to start the company. Originally, when I first started, it was called Tether Table, the company. And my wife, who works with me, she's like, why don't we be bigger than that? Why don't we be Tether Tools? We can do a bunch of stuff besides just a table. And I'm like, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was how it got started, yeah.
With the table. Okay. And how did you see the table pick up? Did you see people having the need for it, or how did you go about selling that product to people? Was it were you making all the products by hand yourself at the start, or did you try and put a little bit of infrastructure in place knowing that it was going to take off like it did?
In the beginning, I just built one for me and tried to work out the bugs, and I rebuilt it, and I kept iterating on until I was happy with something that worked for me. And then I started showing it to other, I was still assisting during that time, and I was meeting more photographers. And when I was finally ready to show something, then I showed it to some other working photographers, and they liked. I'm like, oh, where do can I buy one? And so that's kind of how it had taken off by word of mouth in the beginning. We made everything, we still do all the tables and everything locally here in the market. So I was doing like small runs of 25 at a time, kind of a thing, and then it started growing, and we've been with these same guys, these same machine shops here in town for 15 years.
Cool. So they well know how to make the products to the standard, the high standard that you require.
Yeah, and they're not making them as often now. Like in the beginning, it was like, could you do a little bit more, and
Yeah.
now we do them in bigger quantities. But that's still in our line, that product.
Yeah.
But that was how we got started originally, was with the table and just word of mouth.
So when the photographers were using the table, what kind of cable were they actually using to tether with? Were they using little small USB-C cables? I doubt they were around at that stage. What was the cable of that was required? Because since I've started digging, maybe we have the micro B, and but that's what I've really grown up with. It was the USB-C and the micro B cable.
Yeah. Well, when I was getting involved with this, very few cameras even tethered. Lightroom didn't have tethering. There was no iPads. Capture One was around, but they supported the face cameras. And one of the photographers that was doing the tethering, he had a phase back. I think it was like a P45 or something, and that was a FireWire cable. And so he was, using a FireWire, but it was a short cable. But I noticed, where we went from there. I just started watching, this whole workflow of tethering, and as I mentioned before, there was no support for this infrastructure. What he was doing was he was actually wrapping the cable around his lens to keep it from coming out of the port. And I was like, well, there's got to be a better way to do that. You're losing, you're already using a short cable, and now you're losing a foot or two wrapping it around. So I developed this product called the jerk stopper, and it was this little clip that attached to the camera strap eyelet that anchored the cable into the camera. And it had a little quick release, so that piece would stay on the cable and it would clip in when you're ready to go. And that started going like gangbusters pretty quickly, because that's always been an issue, the connections and everything like that. And then, looking at the cable, I looked at the cable he was doing, and Face has this unique port. He would shave down the cables with a razor blade to get it to fit. I'm like, well, doesn't anybody make a cable that fits this? So we, started dipping our toe into making, a cable that would fit the phase back, and making them longer, and to support the needs that are required on a shoot. So that's kind of how it evolved from just a table to, cable management, cables.
Okay, so surely when you started moving into cables, you kind of had to educate yourself a little bit more on the electronics and the specs that these cables needed to be. What was that like self-learning process, or how did you go about learning all this information that is required to create cables and make sure that they work to the standard that they need to?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was fairly straightforward. There was a lot of just, testing and making sure that it was holding up to what we needed to do. It was a lot simpler before USB-C. That's made things quite a bit more complicated, because that's an incredibly sophisticated technology. But with FireWire, when we started doing that, and some of the early USBs, it was a lot more straightforward. You weren't working with IC chips and retimers, and it was a lot simpler. The biggest complication was figuring out what port your camera had, because there were so many different standards at that time. So that was really educating people on how to figure out what port they were. And our camera finder on our website consistently is the most visited page. People try to figure out what they need, even now with USB-C. But the technology was a little bit more straightforward, but we were going out of spec for FireWire because we were going these longer distances, going out of specifications for USB cables because of these required longer distances. So we had to improve on a lot of things to make sure that the data could transmit all the way to 15 feet, 32 feet, 16 meters. So that was a lot of engineering and learning that.
And the innovation of like the jerk stopper, where did it go from there? So obviously we have like the tether block and the lever lock now. So, and the lever lock is actually quite new to the lineup of products that you have. I know a lot of digis are creating their own products like the tether block, and they have their own little systems or their own little features on them. So where did the innovation for that lever lock, say, compared to the tether block come from?
So we started with the jerk stopper, and that was a great solution. But just listening to customers over time, some wanted something that was going to hard lock, that it wouldn't allow for the cable to move at all. So the tether block came out of that, where it routed underneath the camera and it went in between the plate and the camera body. But over time, we as we're out there and talking with photographers and digital techs, and it wasn't the best solution. It wasn't as good as it could be. It was a great solution. It worked great, but it slowed people down a little bit on the set because you had to take the plate off, remove the cable from in between. So it took a little bit more time than was necessary on the set. A lot of people were using pigtails, so the cable would always stay into the camera, and then they would plug an extension cord into there. So the idea for the lever lock came from the community, that like, hey, how can we make this quicker and a little bit more seamless? So after a lot of iterations and testing a lot of different models, we came up with this cam cleat design where the technology comes right from nautical, boating. The more in climbing, mountain climbing, the more you pull it, the tighter it gets. And we finally got to a place where we were really happy with the design, and it's been really well received in the community. We certainly really appreciate all the support, but we think we've got to a really good place now where it's quick to break down and set up.
Okay, that's really interesting with the cam cleat. Obviously, with all this demand for them, how do you manage stock? I know one of the primary reasons why I know your brands and it's become such a staple as a part of tethering is, oh, I need a tether cable, oh, I need to find that orange cable, I need to buy one of those, is just simply because the retail presence that you've managed to develop over the 15 years that you've been in business. How did you go about like building those supply chains and building those relationships with the retailers over so many years?
Yeah, it took a lot of hard work, a lot of time. So we built up supply chains, but then also getting that supply out to our resellers and our partners. My wife and I work together, and she has always kind of oversaw and been in charge of the sales and marketing side of the business. I'm more in the operations, making sure supply chains are intact and all that, and product development. So my wife's done a fantastic job over the years. I remember many of times where it's 2, 3 in the morning when she's on calls, because that's the hours that some of our partners were in business. So we adapted to that. But I think the core reason why we've had so much success is that we view everybody, our dealers, our distributors, the photographers we work with, we view them all as partners. And we do what it takes to make sure that our partners in different retail locations are taken care of, that they're supported by us. If they're doing a marketing push, we want to help them with that and support their trade shows. So if they ever have a problem, they know how to get a hold of us very, very quickly and to get it resolved, and whatever it is that they need, gets taken care of. And it's the same way with our photographers and digital techs in the community. If they ever have a problem, they can always get a hold of us on the phone. We've got people waiting to take that and help. So I think that's really one of the things that has allowed us to be a part of the community. We're very grateful that we play a small role in all these photographers and resellers part of the business.
So with the success of the products growing, how did you know, when did you know that, okay, this is actually working? And when did it suddenly go from a side hustle to a job that and a journey that you really wanted to go on?
Yeah, from day one, I never really viewed it. Once I started Tether Tools and put a product out there. I never really viewed it as a side hustle because I was so busy. I didn't have time to even think about that. I was, working out of the garage at our house, and we had just had our first kid. So I was just working round the clock, and I never really had time to think like, is this going to work? It was already kind of working. So I was very fortunate in that regard. But when it really became real that, okay, well, we're doing something here that is bigger than just me working out of the garage, was when my wife said, hey, I really like what you're doing. We can work together. Why don't I come aboard full time? And that's when it got really real. So we started working together from, probably about 6 months, 8 months after I started Tether Tools, and
Wow.
We've been both in the business ever since. We're a small team here. After 15 years, we're very streamlined, but we've got a great crew, and just keep grinding it out.
Okay, so it sounds like that the products really did take off from the get-go, with you nearly going full time after 8 months of the project. It's pretty quick takeoff. And with lucky or hard work. So with all that kind of new demands, how did you manage supply chains and your network with getting product to customers?
In the beginning, it was a challenge, and we had the advantage that we were manufacturing a lot of the stuff, right up the street, so we could, lean on them to help us. But it was always a challenge in the beginning when you start running low on something and you've got lead times. Over the years, we've put systems in place that have been able to alert us when we need to order. We're not able to just walk down the shelves and say, oh, we're low on that, we're low on that, we're low on that. There's just too many moving parts now. So once we were growing and we needed to put these systems in place, and a lot of it's software based, inventory management systems that automate a lot of the things. But that took a big, that was a big leap, to go automated and to do that. It was not an easy. It was easy from a mental standpoint that you don't have to remember all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the implementation wasn't easy. It was a big undertaking for a small team to put these in place. But once they were in place, it makes life a lot easier.
Okay. And now I'm sure you have warehouses or stockpiles around the world for different markets. So I know some digis have their UK store and they base it out of London, and then they have an EU store as well, and it can come from Lithuania or other places. Just then they can play those transport links a little bit quicker and get stuff delivered. Is that a huge process, trying to get your head around that, and just keeping in mind that originally it was from a creative industry that you came from, and maybe this stuff didn't come naturally, this kind of logical thinking or supply or logistic thinking didn't come naturally. Did you find that you kind of had a natural head for that? And I'm asking two questions here. I'm going to continue with this one. Did you find that you kind of naturally had a head for logistics and managing the supply, or were you always kind of tipping away at kind of the creative stuff as well?
I definitely lean more toward the creative product development. That's where my passion is just making great tools for the community. But a lot of it is just learning on the job. Like, hey, how do we roll with it and get better and get our solutions out faster and to our partners less expensive. And so you kind of learn by trial and error. I mean, you make mistakes, and it's like any business. We made a ton of mistakes, but you roll with it. You can't dwell on it, and you learn from it, and you just keep trying to get better and better. There's always something going on in the world that makes things challenging, And you lose night's sleep over it, but then once the dust settles, you figure out, okay, well, this is the path forward, and this is how we're going to do it. And so yeah, we've got different distribution hubs, and but it didn't come naturally. It's a lot of really boring late night reading on how to do this and talking to people that you've never talked to before and you kind of have to trust. But it's all worked out, but we made our mistakes.
Yeah.
We keep trying to get better. After 15 years, we don't have it dialed in. We're still a small mom and pop in a lot of ways, but we're getting there.
Yeah. And from the 15 years that you've been working on the business, was there any big significant roadblock that you faced that you have overcame, and how did you overcome that challenge?
I mean, there's always problems. I mean, that's like I'm like
that's just business,
the problem
isn't it?
solver in chief here. That's what I've got a great team, and they solve a lot of the problems. But usually, when the big ones happen, I mean, COVID was a huge thing. Everything was going good, and then on a Saturday, complete lockdown, and Monday we had to open for business, right? How do you get an entire workforce working remotely, quickly, so that we can continue to, help our community and photographers and keep everything moving. And I'm proud of what we accomplished. We came out of it a lot stronger. It forced us to get a lot more serious about some of the things that kept putting on the back burner. So there's always challenges. I mean, right now we're facing challenges with tariffs. So we're figuring that out on how we're going to adapt and continue to move business forward and get the tools to the people that need it.
Yeah, obviously COVID was a challenge. This kind of provides you with a different type of challenge with all the tariffs, and it seems to be quite a dynamic situation at the moment as well, where things are changing very quickly. So how are you faring up? Are you sitting tight and just kind of rolling with the punches as they come, or is there kind of a contingency plan in place to try and make the best of the situation?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part, I mean, COVID, that happened, and nothing we could do. This was self-inflicted, this thing. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, we had some contingency plans before the new administration had come in. We wanted to hedge our bets a little bit. It's probably worse than we thought it would have been. But hopefully it's only temporary, and things revert back to some sort of normalcy. But we've been toying around a number of different ideas. I mean, we don't bring a lot of product necessarily into the United States. So I mean, the thoughts of launching new products everywhere but the United States seems really strange to us because we're based here in the United States, but that's the reality that we might be facing.
So you mentioned a couple new products there, so tell me about how do you come up with those, and do you tweak a few ideas over a couple of years, or what's the product development like? Do you listen to other digitechs and kind of keep an eye on socials and see what other people are creating, and maybe there's an idea around this, especially there's a lot of iPad stuff coming out now, and I'm not sure, I see you have an iPad clamp that goes kind of across. Maybe is there development on that, or how do you come up with ideas for the products and develop them?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we're very fortunate that we've got a great network of digital techs and photographies in the community that we meet with on a regular basis, talk about ideas, what's happening. We share product ideas with them. They share stuff with us, and so we've got a number of things in the hopper. The development cycle can be anywhere from 6 months to 3 years. Some of these, depending upon how complicated they are. But it's an endless loop. We get ideas, we share it with our community. They give us feedback, and we continue to try to make the best thing before we actually put it out there.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you certainly are ear to the ground when it comes to listening to the community. I've only maybe put out 2 or 3 videos, and you were straight on to me and asking me to do a call and make a video ourselves. So you really are in with the community and keeping your finger on the pulse.
Well, I feel very connected to the community. I was when I was assisting, I was working Capture One and trying to figure this out for photographers, and the industry's been taken much further than I ever imagined. But at heart, that's I think where my where my passions lie. I kind of really enjoy that part of the industry. So I mean, I love what you're doing, with the videos and stuff, and I think that the community is somewhat fragmented. That somebody pulling it together and teaching and sharing amongst the community is great. We've always tried to do that. We've got our Digitech toolbox, which has always been out there, which has a hotline in for our customer service, so you can call direct in, and different promotions and stuff, and teaching kind of stuff, but not to the extent that you're doing it. It's great.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know definitely the Digitech hotline and the toolboxes, it's definitely a need. I'm part of a number of group chats that have digitechs from all over Europe. Every single day without fail, messages go in asking about different pieces of gear, how to troubleshoot stuff on set, and everyone always puts their shoulder to the wheel and really try and finds a solution for that person on the set, whether it's Milan or Paris or London or in Dublin. It's really great that the community is there and the support is there.
And what you guys are doing on set is so crucial to make everything flow properly. The liaison between the photographer and the art director, and we understand how important it is that everything flows seamlessly, and we're grateful to play a small part in that.
So how did you educate photographers and assistants on tethering, using the tools that they had available at the time?
Tether Tools started, tethering wasn't really popular. It was something that high-end commercial photographers did. Capture One was there, and they were supporting phase cameras, but that wasn't like the everyday DSLR that people were using. I remember the early days, Lauren and I would go on a vacation, and we'd pop into the camera stores in whatever town that was, and often they would say, well, my customer doesn't tether. I don't need this product. So we realized that there was a lot of educating that we needed to do out in the marketplace. So, something that Laura and I, we call the push-pull strategy. So we put together a lot of education trying to inform photographers on how critical it was to getting better as a photographer. You can see the composition, you can make sure it's sharp, that you don't have to rely on the small screen on the back of the camera. And then the pull strategy, we spend a lot of time, and we continue to educate, to this day. But we spend a lot of time educating agencies and art directors on the value of being able to see these images coming through on larger screens, and that they should probably make sure that the photographer that they're going to work with is used to tethering and is familiar with that. So this push-pull strategy really help bring tethering up from just a very niche part of photography to a critical component on photo sets. And we continue to do that today. Education's always been a big part of what we're about.
So as the company grew, what were the key decisions that you had to make to enable it to grow that much more?
Probably the hardest thing, and it continues to be a struggle for me every day, is letting go of things. When I first started, I was out of the garage and I was doing everything. I was building the website and managing the cart and shipping and packaging and I mean everything from A to Z. Reaching out to people. The letting go piece by piece has always been a challenge. I'm fortunate that Lauren and I worked together. She took a lot off my plate when she came aboard. We kind of divided things right down the middle, and that's been really beneficial. But it's still a challenge every day for me to let go of certain things. Sometimes it's easier to say, I can do that, no problem. It'd take me 5 minutes to do that. So I still struggle with it. I'm better at it. I have to be, but it's still a struggle.
So how competitive is the actual tether cable market?
Yeah, great question. Today's landscape, it's pretty competitive. When we started Tether Tools, there was nobody making these long cables or cables that fit specifically in the phase ports and all the different configurations. So in the beginning, it wasn't very competitive at all. But recently, other players have come into the market, and which has been great for the industry. It's pushing us to do better. I mean, I think we always were trying to do really the best thing that we could, but over time, having competition in any field is better for the users, the community. So I think it's pushed us to do better. I think we've always done a really good job in putting out a really solid, reliable product. We've always prided ourselves on customer service, being able to get a hold of us instantaneously for the most part with our 800 numbers. I think we've always done a really good job supporting with our warranty if there's ever an issue. We've got a 1-year warranty, but I think with the Digitech toolbox, I think it's even an extended warranty. So I think we've always done the right things. Things break, nothing ever is 100%, but when something goes wrong, we always take care of it. I think that's how we've always stood apart from any of our competitors.
And with the tether cable market, obviously we have the UK, the US, the EU, but I actually don't hear a lot of stuff coming from Asia regarding tethering or photographers. It's probably the language barrier. But is there maybe another competitor that is big in that Asian or Chinese market that I wouldn't know about or us in the West wouldn't know about?
We've got great partners in Asia that do really well. We support them however we can. We different shows that they're doing and educational content that they're putting out, and different professional photographers in the market that they work with. So we just try to support them the best we can. I don't know what the landscape looks like there. It's not a whole lot different than anywhere else in the world.
Would the demand for your product be much the same in both markets, or does one favor the other?
I think it is. If a photographer or digital tech is serious about their trade and they want to have the best tools and know that there's a company that stands behind them, I think Tether Tools is a good choice for them. There's always going to be the $8 USB cable off of a website. In the US we have it, all over the world there's you can buy a cheap USB cable, but ours are engineered much different. Under the hood, the quality of components that we use, and all of these longer cables are completely out of USB specifications. Their maximum specification goes up to 10 feet. We're trying to push this stuff 15, 32, 65 feet, and we're pushing a lot of data, 100 megabyte files, 200 megabyte files with some of the Fujis, essentially instantly. I mean, we press that shutter and we want it to pop up on our screen like right away. So there's a lot that goes in under the hood to create that, to make sure that, one, it's not damaging your camera, it's not damaging your computer, you're not damaging the cable, so you get a good lifespan out of it, because that's a lot that's going in under the hood. So yeah, you can buy like a 15-foot USB cable, but they're not taking into account what that use case is. So that's what we do when we build our cables. We're looking at this incredibly unique use case in our market, and try to build the best product for that market. And do we always get it right? No. I mean, we've had some problems. Recently, USB-C is an incredibly sophisticated technology. You've got much more so than previous USB cables. You've got microchips in there, and there's communication going back and forth between computer and camera, and they're constantly talking. And do I need data transfer? Do I need video transfer? Do I need power? And a plethora of other technologies that are in this cable. So when we launched our USB-C line, everything was working really well. All of the cameras we were supporting at the time. And all the camera manufacturers were instructing, if you're tethering, turn off power management while you're tethering. And then Canon, the R series came out, and you couldn't turn the power off. And our cables were delivering this power, and we know that it doesn't play nice when you're trying to pump these huge files instantaneously. So we worked extensively with Canon, and this is where we've gotten tremendously better over the years, because we started working a lot closer with all the camera manufacturers. But Canon in particular, the R series, had some challenges because you couldn't turn the power off on the camera, so it was getting dropped connections. And of course, the easy thing to do is to say, oh, this cable's bad. So we worked extensively with Canon to try to get a firmware update where they could turn the power off in this camera. After quite a bit of time working with them and going all the way up to Japan corporate and stuff, and working with their engineers there, this was a hardware decision that they made with this camera line, that you couldn't turn the power off. So during that time, we were also in parallel saying, okay, well, we need to solve this problem for photographers and digital techs. So we worked really hard on developing the Optima line cable, which we launched a couple months ago, which is exclusively built from the ground up for these large files, data priority, and it's been working great and blockbusters within the community, because it was built exclusively for our needs. So now you don't have to worry about turning the power off on the camera. You don't have to worry if the camera can't turn off its power. You just plug and play, and you're ready to go. So that was a fun exercise to have to deal with, but it's gotten us much better. Now it's allowing us, because of the relationships that we've built with all the camera manufacturers, and really getting into the engineering department on how they're building the next generation of cameras. We're way ahead of the curve on building cables for those cameras already. So it's great.
That's really cool. I'd say the insight that you got from that, even from like a hardware point of view, like hearing from the inside why they're choosing a port or choosing a different cable over the other, is really cool to have.
Yeah, tethering's gotten a lot more mainstream. When we started Tether Tools, it was an afterthought by camera manufacturers. They had a port on there, and they supply like the 3-foot cable with there, and that's more to transfer images that are on the card, and they never really gave a lot of thought to the idea of tethering. But we've helped grow this industry, this niche within the photography industry, and now they take it a lot more serious that it is a vital component for people's livelihoods, that it is that critical. So we've helped camera companies build better systems for that, and we're going to continue to do that.
Cool. And it kind of sounds like from your assisting days to now, there was a huge amount of upskilling and learning yourself about the electrics and how to actually build these cables from scratch, especially when you were one of the first to market.
A lot of it's trial and error, trying different things, working with our manufacturers for our specific use case. I'm not going to claim to be an engineer and fully understand this stuff. I know enough of it that helps move the business forward, and I know what I need. I know what it needs to do, but I have to rely on these electrical engineers to help build the product that I want to come to market. So they understand our use cases. They understand what we need it to do to help photographers. So that's the big part of it. If something goes wrong, I dive in to learn why it's not working right, to help them solve the problem. But when push comes to shove, I have to rely on our electrical engineers and our manufacturing partners.
Okay, now that we're kind of coming to the end of the conversation, there's so many digitechs out there that are creating their own products, and I've only chatted to one or two over the past couple of weeks. You were those once before, so what advice would you give digis that are building their own products and growing scale in order to bring those products forward?
That's a great question. I heard a saying once, and it really resonated with me. Somebody had said, entrepreneurs are people that are willing to quit their 40-hour-a-week job to work 80 hours a week. So you really have to be prepared to do that and wear a lot of hats. It is a big commitment. I didn't know what kind of a commitment it would be. I don't regret it, but I've made sacrifices. My wife's made sacrifices for this business. We think we're doing the right thing. We're helping a lot of people. But you just have to be prepared to make some big sacrifices and have some sleepless nights. But it's great. I love it. I love challenges. And if you're the kind of person that loves constant challenges, go for it, man. You gotta love it. You gotta love what you're doing.
Josh, thank you so much for jumping on the call with me. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I just have one more question. Do you use the products yourself? And do you still shoot yourself? I know that's kind of where the company came from, was from your own assisting work. So do you still shoot?
Yeah, I still shoot, but more just personal stuff. I threw my hat in the arena years ago before Tether Tools to try to become a commercial photographer, and I realized that I wasn't as good of a photographer as I was product developer. So I do use the products. I shoot. My kids are active in all kinds of stuff now, and so I always have a camera in my hand. Yeah, and thank you very much for taking the time to with me. I appreciate you learning a little bit about what we're doing and what you're doing for the community as a whole. I think it's really valuable, and keep up the good work.
I really appreciate that, and thanks again, and let me know if you're ever in Dublin and we can grab a pint.
That sounds great. And likewise, if you're in the Phoenix area.
I will do. Good stuff. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.